Well, welcome back, folks. You may recall from a recent episode here that I discussed removing the rust from the inside of the fuel tank on the SL125 project. And as part of that video, I mentioned that I wasn't really thinking I was going to line that fuel tank using my preferred tank liner of choice, and that's right here. We did talk about that a little bit. And I was just going to leave it raw. The other day I was cleaning off my workbench here, and I had this can on the bench, and I was getting ready to put it away, and I thought, well, this can is the last one I have that I ordered some years ago, probably over a decade ago, and it's getting old, and I thought, well, maybe it would be an interesting video to take the users through the process of lining the fuel tank using my fuel tank liner of choice. So that's what we're going to do today. So I've changed my mind, and we're going to line the fuel tank on the SL125, and that's the point behind this video, is to demonstrate the process. Now, I'm not going to take you through all the nitty-gritty detail, but I will give you the gist of how I approach this project, and I will explain my steps as I go. And on the other end of this whole thing, we should end up with a nice lined, fresh fuel tank inside for the little Honda SL125. So let's go ahead. First thing I'm going to do is take you through the steps that we have to execute to line the fuel tank. Now, this is not a complicated process, but you do have to be deliberate, take your time, and don't take any shortcuts. But it is relatively straightforward, as you'll see. Clearly, we have the fuel tank here for the little Honda. First thing we're going to do, I've already done that, by the way, is I have once again plugged the tank, and you can probably see right here the original cap that I had installed earlier. I just reinstalled it. It took all of maybe 4 or 5 minutes to put that back in place. And the reason I had to do that is I want to seal the tank again, as I'm going to, or I already have, treated it with evaporust. There's actually evaporust in here right now. It's probably 3/4 full of evaporust. And the reason I did that is I wanted to remove as much of that surface rust as possible. Now, frankly, you don't have to be too anal about that. You don't have to have every single piece of evidence of surface rust removed. It's not that critical. You want the obvious rust, the flaking, and any other contamination removed. But if you've got a little surface rust in there, that's not going to be a make or break for you. But since I was starting over with this process, I thought, well, I'll just treat it first with evaporust, make sure I removed any obvious surface rust that I could. So yesterday I plugged it up, and I put the cap back on, and I actually sat it, positioned it like this overnight yesterday into today, and you can see it's weeping just a little bit right there. That's why I tipped it upside down over this container, so the evaporust, any of it that weeped out, would end up in the container. And then this morning early when I came out, I reversed it and set it in this position. That way I make sure the entire insides of the tank is coated and treated with evaporust. Again, that's just to try to clean up any of the remaining surface rust. The next step is obviously get the evaporust out of there. Now drain the evaporust into this container, this plastic container or pail, because I'm going to recover it and put it back in the original bottles. So this got to be drained. Then what I will do, and now it becomes, timing becomes fairly critical. I will fill the tank probably half full with hot water. Now I'm very fortunate in my shop. I have running hot and cold water, and I will fill it probably half full with as hot of water as I can get it out of my tap, and I will slosh it around really well to rinse the remaining evaporust out. I'll drain the hot water, and once that hot water is drained, now we have to be very deliberate, because we need to get that remaining water out of the inside of the tank so that we don't have a duplication of the flash rust. And the way I'm going to do that is this. I'm going to put 5 or 6 bottles of this isopropyl alcohol, otherwise known as rubbing alcohol, in the tank. And I just bought this at my local pharmacy, drugstore here in the little town that I live in. This is a very high concentration of alcohol. You can see 99%. You can find this in different strengths. You'll see, I think, 50%, 70%, 90 or 99%. I like a high strength alcohol, and only because I think it just cleans better. Now, there's really 2 reasons why I use alcohol to flush the water out of the tank. The first is alcohol is a great solvent, is a great cleaner. And the second reason, I'm not going to reveal here. I'm going to leave it up to you, the viewers, to determine why I would use alcohol as a final rinse. It's not complicated, and think back to your high school basic chemistry. If you know why I'm using alcohol to rinse the tank, then please post it in the comments. I think there's going to be people that are going to know this right off the bat. If you don't, go look it up or wait till the comments get posted. But we're going to do the final rinse with alcohol. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my shop vac on reverse, pull the plug out, I'll pull that whole tap cover off, and I'll use the shop vac to blow air through and dry it. The flowing air will help remove the remainder of the alcohol. Another reason you use alcohol is it evaporates quickly. You need this tank bone dry before you proceed. I mean, it has to be completely dry, no moisture at all. Run the shop vac in reverse so it's blowing rather than vacuuming, probably for, I don't know, half an hour to an hour. It depends on how dry I can get the tank. I'll run it as long as necessary. Then at that point, it's really ready for resealing and the treatment of the tank liner, the liquid tank liner. At that point, I'll have to again seal this tap off, and we will pour the tank liner in the tank, seal it up again through the opening here, probably use duct tape for that. Then you roll the tank, roll the tank, roll the tank. Take your time, roll the tank so that all the insides get coated. Then you open it up, allow the tank liner to drain out of the petcock mount there, and let it sit for 24 hours or so, and it's done. That's the basic process we're going to go through. First step here is to get the vapor rust out of the tank. So what I'm going to do is simply, I'm going to remove this filler cap. And tilt the tank over and into this bucket and drain it. Now we've got the tank drained. You noticed I wasn't too delicate about that. I could have probably put more effort into trying to reclaim this evapor rust, but it's been used a number of times right now, and I'm not real concerned about trying to save every drop. I'll go ahead and put the lid on this plastic container for now, this pail, and eventually I'll put it back in the original containers, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I want to see what the tank looks like after the evapor rust has been drained. This has not been rinsed yet. I don't know if you can see that in there or not. So now what I'm going to do is take it over to my sink. I'm going to fill it with as hot water as I can get out of the tap, and then I'm going to slosh it around, and then we'll drain it, and then we're going to fill it with the alcohol. Okay, I have probably a third full of hot water. Now I'm just going to squish it around really good, like this. Make sure all areas of the inside of the tank get hit with the hot water, and then I'm going to drain it and immediately refill it with the alcohol. Okay, the tank's been flushed with hot water. Now we're going to go ahead and start putting the alcohol in. So I have 2 bottles of alcohol in here right now, 2 of these plastic bottles. That's a quart, about a liter. I'm going to save the second 2 bottles for a final rinse. And now I'm just going to do the same thing with the alcohol. I'm going to turn it around and around and around. Spend a few minutes doing that. You don't have to rush at this point, take your time. I just emptied the first 2 bottles of alcohol out of the tank. I just put in the second 2 and we're going to do a final rinse. By the way, if you are doing this on a tank with paint that you wish to preserve, you might want to figure out a way to protect the paint. This alcohol may, in fact, strip clear coat. I don't know. I'm not worried about this tank, of course, because I'm going to be repainting it anyway. But this is something to be aware of when you're, if you're going to use alcohol, or any solvent for that matter. So now I'm going to set up my shop vac and so that it's in blowing mode rather than vacuuming mode, because I want to blow air through here to dry out the inside and that alcohol. And when we're done, the goal is to have a clean, dry, with minimal flash rust inside of the fuel tank. So I've got the cap removed from the petcock mounting boss right there. Got a little piece of paper towel down because the exhaust from the vacuum is going to come out here because it's already dribbled a little bit. Just a little piece of wood to prop it up so that this has a place to drain. I'm going to take my outlet or my tube from my old shop vac. I have several of these. Put it in here, turn on the vacuum, and just let it go. And every 5-10 minutes, I'm going to move this around like this. And just let it run until I'm satisfied that the inside of the tank is dry. Okay, it's been 30-40 minutes and I've moved this nozzle around 35 minutes or so during the course of that time period. And I think it's pretty good and dry inside. One thing you want to make sure you do if you follow this technique is make sure the filter on your shop vac or whatever process you're using is clean. If it's not, when you put it in reverse, you're going to blow dust out of here and you're going to fill the inside of your fuel tank with dust, which is something you really don't want to do. But let me see if I get my flashlight for you here. And she's good and dry, and she's virtually rust-free. No flash rust, no any kind of rust for that matter. So now we're going to go ahead and start the process of lining the tank itself. What that will consist of is I'm going to put the outlet tap cover back on to seal it up. I'm going to put a layer of duct tape over this and cut an opening in it so I can pour in the fuel tank liner, and then I'll have to reseal it, and then I will rotate that tank around and around and around and around until I'm confident the inside is completely coated. And then we'll take it all back apart, let it drain, and let it sit for 24 hours. So let me go ahead and get this thing plugged up and we'll come back. One other thing I should mention is I cleaned around this rim here of where the fuel cap fits. I used a Dremel and just cleaned that original paint back a bit and made sure that this is good and clean around here. You'll see why a little bit later. But now I'm going to go ahead and cover this up with some duct tape because it seals so well. Cut a hole in it so that I can insert the liner itself, and of course this end has already been plugged. I think we're about ready to go now to add the tank liner to the fuel tank. It's been sealed, the opening here, with duct tape. As you can see, I cut a round opening in it so that I can just put this funnel in like that and then pour the liner directly into the tank. I will use a pair of gloves. This material is very much like a very thick viscous paint. You'll see that in a few minutes. It has been thoroughly shaken, this can, and I will also, once I open it, stir it and make sure there's no solids on the bottom that I was not able to mix when I shook the can originally. I have a plastic pail here with a liner. That's just a shopping bag. That's what I'm going to drain the tank into. Most of the liner, most of the contents of this can will drain away, as you'll see eventually. But I think we're about ready to go, so allow me to open this can and we'll get on with it. While I got the container open, it did fight me a little bit. As you can see there, it did not want to come open, so I ended up using pliers to get it open. But it's okay, it's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. Looks like I ripped my glove right there, my finger. It was mixed pretty well. I did use the flat-bladed screwdriver just to stir it up a little more, make sure there's no solids on the bottom. It was pretty thoroughly mixed. So now all I got to do is pour it in the tank. And put a piece of duct tape over that opening that funnel is. This, by the way, is plenty for this tank. For a tank of this size, that's plenty of material. Let it drain down. Put a piece of tape over this, seal that up, take the gloves off now. Now I'm just going to roll the tank around like this, take my time, probably 20 minutes, half hour. I want to make sure everything inside is coated. And then we'll pull the drain plug out and drain it. Well, it's been a good solid 20 minutes plus. I've done the complete roll around. I did have a little bit of weeping out of here of the tank liner. No consequence to that. And I've let it sit here for a couple of minutes, can it out like that so that it would drain down to this corner, because I'm going to pull this cap off, because that's where I'm going to drain the tank from. So, start by removing the bolt, because that's really what's holding this onto the tank. Now what I'm going to do, hold it over this, I don't know if you can see that or not, drain it. Into that garbage can. And I'm just going to allow it to sit. A couple minutes. And while that's draining like that, I'm going to take my finger and wipe it off, make sure it's clean. Clean around the neck just a bit. And I'm going to take some of this Pour 15. Let me get you up here so you can see what I'm doing. Take some of this Pour 15, put it on my fingertip, and I'm going to run it around the edge here. to seal that surface there. If I need more, I got a whole bunch of it here in this can. Hope I'm not blocking your view, but there's not a real rush on this. I mean, it's not like it's going to dry on you in a couple of minutes. I just want to make sure that the inside of this is well sealed with the tank liner. Now when I paint the tank, I'll bring the paint right up to the edge here. It was originally. And I'm going to make sure I get plenty on there because it'll just run down through to the inside. Like that. Now I just want to make sure that the tank sits in a position where it will drain. I know you probably can't see that very well, but I'm just going to let it drain for a while. And I'll move it around a little bit to make sure that everything runs to that outlet. We're going to go ahead and let that kind of drain out for a while. Like I said, I'll move it around a little bit. And we're essentially done at this point for now, outside of making sure it drains well. And I'll bring you back in, 24 hours or so, maybe 48, and we'll take a look at where we landed. It's been about 24 hours now since we poured the fuel tank liner into the tank, and the liner is dry enough to touch. I don't think it's cured out, and frankly, if I was intending to use this and put fuel in it, I'd wait probably a week before I put fuel in, at least 3 or 4 days, if not a week, but that's irrelevant for our purposes right now. I think it came out pretty good. Let me see if I can get you a shot of the inside here without washing out the picture with too much light. I don't know if you can see that there. It flowed out pretty well. I did take a paintbrush and extend down around the edge here the liner so that when I go to paint the tank with the finished paint, I will lightly sand this edge all the way around and overlap the paint just up onto this sealer here to create a nice seal, especially with the epoxy primer sealer that I'll be using. I want to make sure I seal that joint where those two materials come together well. The petcock mount right here, I think you can see that. See what that looks like. I did just run a 6mm threaded chase through there to clean up those threads, and that's pretty much ready to go. We'll talk about the petcock and the filler cap. Here's the original a little bit later on when I go ahead and source those items. I'm going to replace both the cap and the petcock, I think, with new. You can still get those from Honda. But you can see it fits on there. Okay. Even though that's not going to be the one that's going to be used ultimately. And I think it came out pretty good. So I think that's going to be it for this little brief tutorial today, folks, on using a fuel tank liner. Again, this process I use would be applicable to almost any liner, but I've taken you through the steps that I use. You can actually see the results right there. We're going to call this video a wrap at this point. Any issues, questions, thoughts, drop me a note. Otherwise, as usual, thanks for watching.